Greetings, everybody. Boy, it's so great. I love that everybody introduces themselves, tells where they're from. I saw India, I saw Greece, I saw Australia, I believe. It was just wonderful. I love having people from all over. Of course, the U.S., and even saw a couple people from South Florida, Florida. So represent Florida in the house. I am in beautiful, sunny South Florida in the United States, and I hope your day is going as wonderful as mine. I get to talk to all of y'all, so how can my day be bad? Hey, we're going to talk about personas today. Now, I will say this is a 101 series talk, okay? If you are already doing personas, you're not going to get much out of this. This is for, all of my talks are for new site owners and new business owners who are trying to figure out how to get into marketing, and that's the point of this. So if you're already doing this, you're welcome to stay around, but you're not really the target market for this. And I set expectations like that because in the past, some people have said, well, I already knew all of this. And so I want everybody to know exactly who I'm trying to talk to. So hi, my name is Cal Evans. I am a programmer, been a programmer for 36 years. I have also managed development teams. I've also been the CMO of companies before, the Chief Marketing Officer. Done a little marketing in my past. And what we're going to talk to you today about is personas. And why didn't that switch? Is personas. There we go. And specifically, I'm going to walk you through how to create a persona. We're going to talk about why you would want to do it. We're going to talk about what goes into one. I'm actually going to show you some examples of personas, and we're going to talk about that. Now, I've got a book that's coming out. Actually, it's a re-release of a book I wrote a while back called Avoiding a Goat Rodeo. And in it, I talk about personas a little bit. So, and the good news for you is I'm not trying to sell you a book. SiteGround has graciously agreed to release that as an ebook and give it away to anybody who wants it. So keep bugging them. They will get around to it and they will release it. I'm just kidding. They will release it, and when they do, I'm sure you'll get an email about it. And if you'd like a copy of it, you can download it. It talks about a lot more than just personas. It's all about how to get the website that you want, working with developers, working with designers, and sharing your vision. So let's review a little bit. Last month, when we were last together, we talked about the different types of traffic there were and ways that you can drive traffic to your website. Now, I hope everybody has spent time implementing these ideas. I know a few of you have, because some of you have written me on Twitter, DM'd me on Twitter, and asked me questions and asked me to clarify some things. And I hope that my answers helped clarify the concepts that we talked about. But I know some people are at least thinking about this, and that gets me excited. And I hope by now, the ones of you who have implemented these ideas are starting to see more traffic appear on your website and starting to build that most important asset that your company has, your mailing list. A healthy mailing list is one of the most important assets that any company can have. So I hope you're doing that. If you're not, or if you didn't make last month's webinar, it is, I do believe, available on the YouTube channel for SiteGround. It's out there. You can review it there. I don't publish the slides, but if you've seen any of my slides, you understand why. My slides are not going to help you that much. So, but if you review the video, you can catch up. And again, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ping me. Usually Twitter DMs are the easiest. My Twitter DMs are open. If you've got a question, feel free to ask me. If I can help at all, I am always happy to. Now that you're starting to see some traffic appear on your website, and hopefully you're starting to see some people join your mailing list, it's time to start figuring out who these people are, what they want, and most importantly, how we can sell them stuff. Because quite honestly, for most of you, that's what we're interested in, is building a mailing list so we can sell people stuff, so we can build our company. And this is where marketing personas come in. The first question everybody asks is, what is a persona? Exactly what is? Well, a marketing persona is, at its very basic, it's a way to categorize your customers based on different criteria. We're going to create a character that represents the different types of customers in your marketplace. In short, they're buckets that you can put your customers in. Now, personas are important because they give you the big picture, the broad picture of the different segments of your audience. And as we'll see, when you create a persona, you don't create a one-on-one representation of each of your customers. We group the customers together based on common attributes, and that becomes a persona. Now, in general, most of you will generate 3 to 4 personas, and that'll cover 90% of your audience or your customer base, and that's enough. Okay, you don't have to go farther than that. I dealt with one company that had over 50 personas, but that was one of the largest tech companies in the United States, actually in the world. And they had multiple product lines. And for each product line had its own group of personas, but altogether their marketing group was responsible for maintaining 50 personas. And this is one of those, once we get done with this, you're not done, okay? You have to maintain these. So you want to make sure that you do it right so that maintaining them is easy. A side note here, never ever use real names, real pictures, real information, or what we call personally identifiable information in a persona. A persona does not represent a specific person. It represents a type of customer that you're dealing with. Now, once we have our personas built out, we can start using them to make decisions like what products to sell to each customer. What content is going to reach this customer and speak to this customer? And, the stuff that we're doing is partly data. Some of it's going to be educated guesses, but you should have a good feeling for who your customers are. So starting off making those guesses and then refining them as you go along, that's perfectly fine. We don't start off and do all guessing, but we start off, it's okay to put some educated guess in there. Also, I call them personas. I've also seen them called customer avatars. So if you hear the concept of customer avatars, that's what they're talking about. But we're going to call them personas here. Okay, the first thing that people ask is, hey, how do you create a persona? Now, I'm going to go through this, but I'm going to show you some examples. Now, earlier in this series, I was actually creating a dummy website called Fat Beard's Pirate Coffee. The problem with that is I was making stuff up to fill in for this, and it wasn't based on reality. I've shuttered Fat Beards. Actually, it's up there, but I'm about to shut it down. But the ones I'm going to show you now are actual personas that I am creating for a project of mine. It's for scuba divers. If you're any scuba divers in the audience, I am not trying to sell you anything. I'm going to do my best not to mention URLs or anything like that. That's not the point. But the point is, I'm no longer showing you dummy data and manufactured things and stuff like that. This is actually real data from projects that I'm actually working on. So what do most personas contain? Well, most personas contain things. They start off with some basic biographical database, like their marital status. Highest education level is important to a lot of customers. Do they own or rent their own home? What's their job title? What's their estimated salary? Now, if you're selling T-shirts, those are probably not important to you. And there's nothing wrong. I love good T-shirts. I've got a whole collection of scuba diving T-shirts, and I'm actually on a limit now. My wife will not let me buy more than one T-shirt anytime we go on a trip because I've got my drawers just stuffed full of them. But so there's nothing wrong. I'm not saying anything bad about T-shirt vendors, but T-shirt vendors really don't care about job title or estimated salary or owner rents your own home. You've got other things that you're interested in. But these are the generics. If you're selling a moderately expensive item, something over $100, then these are things that you're probably going to be interested in. Now, other things that you might be interested in are industry-specific data. In scuba diving, we have to be certified to dive, and you have to be certified to go beyond a certain depth as well. So one of the things that I'm interested in, one of the attributes that I have on my personas, is the highest level of certification they've achieved. I'm also, since one of the things I will be marketing is travel, because we do a lot of travel with scuba diving, even travel here within the United States, not necessarily international. So I want to know the last time they went on a holiday, or have they gone on a dive holiday? And finally, I want to know if they own their own gear. I was on Facebook. I'm on one of the scuba diving forums, and somebody posted on there, "I love to scuba dive, but it's just so darn expensive. What can I do?" And somebody replied, "Well, get another hobby, because there's just no way around it. Scuba diving is an expensive hobby." So, but if they own their own gear, that's a real good sign that they're very serious about that, because they've made a sizable investment in the hobby. Now, they can contain any other data that you want to compile about your customers that you feel is relevant to the purchasing decision. Now, I'll warn you, I've got a podcast episode of Geek to English podcast called Yagni. You ain't going to need it. And it's all about collecting too much customer data. Okay, collect what you need so that you can build your personas and you can make your decisions, but resist the urge to collect just anything and everything, because you're responsible for that data at that point. If you're collecting that data, you're responsible for its safekeeping, and depending on your country's laws, there might be serious penalties if that leaks out. So be very careful about the data that you collect, and only collect the stuff that you absolutely know you need. I would err on the side of not collecting enough data in the beginning and add as needed to flesh out your personas, than going in and just going full bore and trying to collect everything that you can about somebody. Now, where do you get the data? Well, there's two sources for your data. The first is your existing customer base, okay? And you can look at, if you have a shop that's already operating, you can look at your orders and you can make some educated guesses about your customers. If you've got somebody that has spent a good amount of money with you, or spends a regular amount of money on you, you can make some assumptions about that person, and you can put them in a certain persona, or you can build a persona for that type of customer. The other place is industry data. And a lot of the personas that I'm going to show you today, the information comes from industry data. There's not a lot of industry data about scuba divers, and it took me a long time to find what I did find, but there is some out there, and I was able to incorporate that and use that to make my decisions. Look at your sales, though, your current sales, and identify commonalities between your customer. Now, if you're a local brick and mortar shop that has an online presence, then geography is not going to be that important of an attribute, because most of your sales are probably going to come local anyhow. So you're going to need to look beyond that. But if you are only online, geography is a great way to look at it. And how granular you get is up to you. If you want to track simply by country of origin, that's probably good enough. But if you're only selling to your country, then tracking the different regions that your customers are coming from, that could be a good piece of information. But again, only track that if you can make an offer to people in this particular country or this particular region. Okay, if going forward, hopefully next year, in real life events come back and you're tracking the region that people are coming from, and you decide you're going to go to an in-person event in that region, well, that's a good reason to track region for your profiles, not keep it online all the time for your customers, but your profile could have, people in this region. In my area, it would be, I can identify all the customers that are in Florida. And for me, that's important, because if I'm trying to convince people to go on a day-long dive trip, most people aren't going to travel very far to go on a 2-boat dive trip. But if I can identify all the people in my area, say in the area called South Florida, those people can drive here in the morning. We can dive two boats, and they can drive home in the evening, and I don't have to bother everybody else with that. So region is a good thing that you can track if you can find a reason to make special offers to people in a certain region. We talked about PII. Most of the time, most of the time, email address is going to be the core of all your information. Okay, your customer is going to give you that email address, and even your people on your mailing list are going to give you that email address, and that's usually what we use to tie all of this together. Now, one other source that you can do, and I didn't list it as a separate source because it's still your customer base, is create a survey for your customers. Now, I generally create anonymous surveys. I don't ask people personally identifiable information on the surveys, but I write them and ask them, what region of the country are you from? What do you use my product for? This kind of stuff. And then I bring that all back. If email address is important, if it's important for me to associate a survey entry with a customer record, then I'll usually do something like let them know that at the end of the survey, if they'd like to enter a drawing for a free widget or some free consulting on dive gear or something like that, they can put their name in or their email address in, and I'll draw one name or I'll draw 5 names and give them a 30-minute consultation, something like that. That gives them a reason to give you that email address. And once you have that email address, you can connect it up to any sales that you've already got in your existing system. But really the only reason to do that, though, is if you really need that survey data to be identified with specific sales so that you can create your persona. If you don't need that, if you just need to gather information, then I'd steer clear of that, because then you can say you can do a totally anonymous survey, and you can be upfront with them and say, this is anonymous, and you'll get more people respond. I've traditionally had fewer people respond to surveys if they know I'm tracking their email address or something like that. So if you're doing an anonymous survey, let them know up front. That way they will, they're more comfortable in sharing their information. Now, the real value of this data is to help you build your personas. And we figured out the easy stuff, what their job title is, about what they make, because there are databases out there where you can associate region and job title, and it'll give you an average salary. That's really all you need is averages here. But really the hard stuff to figure out is what we call the soft data. Okay, things like, what are a person's goals? What are their challenges? What are their values and fears? Because remember, goals and challenges are where your product can really step in and help them. You can help them overcome a challenge or achieve a goal. Whereas their values and fears are what guide them in making that decision. Okay, their values and their fears are going to filter you in or out of the decision to purchase a product to help them achieve their goal or overcome their challenge. So it's good to get all of those, but it's a little bit tricky to do this. Yeah, you can ask an open-ended question on your survey, okay, just a text box. And most people are simply going to ignore this. I know this because I sent out surveys for 7 years to my developer community for Nomad PHP. 7 years we did surveys, and all 7 years, at least half of them ignored any open-ended question. Open-ended questions are also very hard to quantify. If it's a checkbox or a 1 through 5 or something like that, then we can quantify it easier, and we can break it down and get averages and stuff like that. With open-ended questions, text questions, you have to read it and you have to interpret it. But a good chunk of people are just not going to fill that out. They're not going to take the time. A portion of the ones that do are simply going to lie to you. Now, this is not because they want to. Most people don't intend to lie to you, but they're going to anyhow. A good example of this is if you send out a survey and say, would you buy this product at this price? You'll get, a bunch of them say, yeah, I like that. If you send out the same group of people and say, click here to enter your credit card and buy this product at this price, you'll get a lot fewer, because everybody will get excited about it if there's nothing to no consequence of it. They'll tell you, hey, that's a great idea. They're lying to you. They don't mean to lie to you. They honestly think it's a good idea. But when it comes time to pull out that credit card, then they have second thoughts, and then I don't know about that. So now, there's a small portion that lie to you just because they like to screw with marketers. You got to deal with that, okay? But when it comes time to validate your answers, you're going to find out that a lot of your free-form text is wrong, and you're going to have to filter those out. Now, on the free-form text, goals, values, challenge, or goals, I have it written up here. Goals, challenges, values, and fears, and we're going to keep talking about those. Honestly, the best way to gather this information is to call somebody. Now, I don't recommend you cold calling people. Find your existing customers, email them and say, hey, can I call you and ask you 4 questions? It'll take 5 minutes and we're done. Most people will set up an appointment, and there's some good systems for setting up appointments. I think I use 10to5.com, and that's the number 10to5.com or 10to8.com. I use that for my podcast. It's a real good system and it's free. So you can use that to set it up. And there's a WordPress plugin that plugs right nicely into your existing system. But for each of your personas, you're going to need to call at least 10. But depending on how big your customer base is, it might be 20 or even 40 for each persona. And you ask them, how do they use your product? Why do they like your product? What's the problem that their product solves, or that your product solves for them? And be ready to be surprised on that one, because not everybody uses the product the same way. Okay, that's like duct tape was invented for one specific thing, but we use it for so many other things these days. Be ready to be surprised that when people are using your product for different things. And what keeps them from using your product more, okay? If you've got another level up that you can take them, why haven't they done that? Don't try to sell them. This is not a sales call. Just ask them, and especially don't, when you're asking these questions, don't argue with them, okay? I understand. Hey, that's good. Thank you for that. And then get off the phone. Record all this information so that you can use it in building your customers. Whatever you do, do not, under any circumstances, ask your customer how you can make your product better. It's not the point of the call. And number 2, that's a surefire way to get into the business of delivering personalized products for each individual person. Because some people are using your products in ways you have no idea that they're using them, and they've got certain ideas about your product. And if you just add this feature, it'd be so much better for them. That's one person using your product. If you get a bunch of people using it in a certain way, maybe you start looking at that. But right off the top of the bat, don't ask them that. The 2 examples everybody loves to give about this is, number 1, Henry Ford is famous for saying, but there's actually no proof that he actually said it, if I asked my customers what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. That's true. And the other one is the example of Steve Jobs. When Steve Jobs released the iPhone, he didn't go to people and say, how can I make your phone better? Because at that time, the trend was to make phones smaller. But we had flip phones, we had candy bar phones. They all had these itty bitty little screens. Nobody had thought to make it a communications device. It was just your phone. Now, my kids are very surprised that I make calls on their Twitter device or their GPS device. They don't make phone calls anymore. It's become a communications device. So don't ask your customer how you can make their product or that product better. That's not the point of this. And if you do, you're going to get a bunch of different answers. Okay, now. let's actually look at 3 personas. Ken Masterson. Now, I will tell you this. I manufactured these names out of thin air. I know a gentleman named Ken. I don't know where Masterson came from. It just struck me. And the picture there is an actual picture of a person. I went out to Google, went to images, pasted in Ken Masterson, and that was the first one that came up. So that's my Ken Masterson. But it's important to me that I have a picture and a name to associate this. I don't want this to be Ken is a often diver, okay? But I didn't want to name this often diver because then I can't, it's difficult to relate to. So I have a user profile or a persona named Ken Masterson. Now you can see over here, I've got the personal information. Ken's 38 years old. He's a college graduate. He's married. He has 1 daughter in school. He owns his own home. Now, he likes to travel, but he doesn't take dive vacations because his daughter can't dive. His wife can dive, but his daughter can't, and so they don't want to leave her at home. He has, however, done 1 dive vacation, and that was a liveaboard. And for those of you not familiar with the concept, a liveaboard is where a bunch of us divers get together and go live on a boat for a week, and it is just awesome. Now, Ken's a construction manager, and he makes in the high 90s. That's straight out of Indeed, okay? In the United States, construction managers make about that much. So I pasted that in there. Now, I remember I told you, goals, challenges, values, and fears. Every one of my personas have this because without this information, I can't make educated decisions about what products and what content this person will respond to. So Ken's goal is to dive as often as he can without sacrificing time away from his family or his job. So, diving is important to him, but it's not top of the list. His challenge is balancing the cost of diving and the money against other forces like family. Ken owns his own home. If you own your own home, you know that every now and then something pops up. We bought a new house here about 4 years ago, and 3 months after we moved in, we had what we call the appliance apocalypse. We had 3 appliances die within 1 month. So this stuff happens. So you can't just spend all your money on diving. I wish people could, but they can't. His values, family first. Ken's a family man. Scuba comes second or third down the list. And his fear is spending too much time away from his family because Ken's got a daughter. And if you've got a daughter or if you've got a child in school age, you know that those are important years. The older they get, the less important spending time with them is. Mine are now grown, and one of them's married. The other one's living off in another state. And I cherish the time that we spent with them at this age. So it's important. Well, that's very important to Ken. So any messaging I do to Ken has to take those 4 things into consideration. Now, for diving, these are the demographics I found important. Ken has his advanced open water and many specialties. This means Ken can dive night, he can dive wrecks, he can dive deep, and by deep, I mean he can dive up to 130 feet, which is the recreational limit. But he spent the time to go through these classes and get this education, which to me says Ken really enjoys diving. Ken bought his own gear. Now, in the last 3 years, he spent about $1,500 on scuba. That's minimum buy-in, but I'm assuming that Ken bought most of his gear before older than 3 years. Most scuba gear lasts 5-10 years. So once you make the investment, you don't have to continue investing. But he might have upgraded his regulator or his buoyancy compensating device, his jacket, or something like that. Now, since he loves underwater photography, I'm guessing a good chunk of that $1,500 went to a camera, okay? Because an underwater camera is not cheap. Ken likes to shore dive a lot, which is just gearing up and walking in. It's probably the cheapest way to dive, and if you live near water, that's a great way to dive because really, if you own your own gear, all you have to pay for is gas. He reads Scuba Diving Magazine, which is a publication put out by one of the major certification organizations. And he's a DAN member, and that's very important to me. DAN is the Divers Alert Network. They provide insurance for divers. Most insurance will not cover if you have to go to a decompression chamber or something like that. So all of us that are serious about this, that do it on a regular basis, are DAN members. I've been a DAN member for 11 years. We keep it going, and it covers that just in case. It's not very expensive, but we have a family policy that covers all of that. Not DAN member tells me that they are only the occasional diver, and if they're going to go on a trip, they pick up the DAN insurance for that particular trip, but they don't invest for the full DAN membership. So that fleshes out Ken. Okay, now I'm not going to go in as much detail on the other two, but I'm going to talk a little bit about them. Then I have Mara Lanza. I don't know where Marla came from, but Lanza is one of my coworkers in one of my other contracts. His last name is Lanza, and I thought that was cool, so I chose that. And I pasted Mara Lanza into Google Images, and that's the picture that came up. By the way, I gotta say, Ilana, y'all do such a wonderful job on these slides. Y'all have no idea. When I finished with these slides, I was real proud of them. They were not this good looking, okay? And she did all of this work today because I was a slacker and didn't actually finish my slides up until this morning. And so she's made them look beautiful. So thank you so much for making me look good. Okay, Mara's a little bit older, and by industry standards, 47 is right there in the serious diver type, or what we call an adventure diver age range, okay? She's a college graduate, but she has no children. She makes a little bit more than Ken. She's a project manager. She makes $150,000 a year. On the diving demographic, she owns her own gear, and I left it off of here, obviously, but she has advanced open water, but doesn't have any specialties. So, we know she's serious, but she's taken the advanced course, but she's not taken a lot else. She spent a ton of money on gear. $4,500 will outfit a diver very well, including camera and all that. She reads Scuba Diver, so if I want to reach her, I can advertise there. She also reads undercurrent.org, which is a little more of an offbeat type industry rag. Her goals, to dive as often as she can, but Mara, nobody in her socioeconomic group of friends is a diver. So when Mara goes on a liveaboard or goes to a dive for a vacation, she has to either find a dive buddy to go with her or find somebody there. And this is a challenge if you've never had to do that. And so she likes to dive as much as she can, but she's afraid of her fear is getting a dud for a dive buddy, somebody that is not of her skill level or somebody that doesn't enjoy doing the things that she does. If Mara enjoys watching the fishes go by, then she wants a dive buddy that's content watching the fishes go by. If Mara loves wreck diving, she wants a dive buddy that really enjoys going down to wrecks and seeing the wrecks, which is my personal favorite. I love wrecks. But those are her fears. And of her values, Mara's very interested in conservation of the ocean and sustainability of the dive industry. And by sustainability, I don't mean the dive shops stay in business. I mean that they practice sustainable practices. And that's a big thing with divers. Most divers are conservationists, and so we're very concerned with that. So that's Marla. Then we got Jeff Millman. Jeff is 22 years old. He's a college student. He's living in a college dorm. He wants to travel, but he can't afford to travel as much. And he's never been on a dive vacation, but he is very interested in one. Now, Jeff's goal is to balance his love of diving with the other activities he loves, okay? Now, whereas Marla and Ken are what we call divers, Jeff is what we call someone who enjoys diving. They're not committed to the sport as much. They just enjoy doing it, and that's perfectly fine. His challenge is affording it. That's the big thing. And his fear is ultimately it's just too expensive for him to do, and so he might pass over dive opportunities just because he feels they're too expensive. Now, I've walked you through 3 personas. Those personas, and they're not nearly finished, but what you saw right there took me about 20 hours of research just to do that. So if you think this is something that you're just going to be able to knock out real quick, this is not. But as I show you, there's payoff on this, okay? So Spend the time to do it. And these knock out 90% of the divers according to, or cover 90% of the divers according to the industry statistics that I've been able to find. Oops, sorry, didn't mean to blow your eardrums out there. Okay, so what do we do with them? You've spent the time to build out your personas. You've done the research, you've done a survey, and you've gathered all that information and you've put it all together. What do we do with it? Well, we use these personas. I use these personas as you see them right here to make decisions on products that I'm going to offer and messages that I'm going to send. My entire mailing list is segmented in, I've got a special hidden field, and they're either a Ken, a Marla, or a Jeff in each one of them. So I can send out one email just to my Marlas and give them a different message than I give Ken, because Marla's not interested in the same things as Ken. She doesn't have the same goals, aspirations, or anything else. Messaging is very important. I can also develop special products just for Jeff. And I can only offer those to him because Marla's not going to be interested in that kind of stuff, and Ken has no interest in that, but Jeff really wants these things. So let's look at a couple of things. First of all, at the end of your persona, and by the way, by the time I finish these, a persona is not a piece of paper. It will be a folder that I have because I've got several things that I want in there. But the first thing is an elevator pitch, okay? My project is called Uncle Cal's Dive Club. So for Marla, my elevator pitch is travel with us and you'll never be alone. We'll match you up with a dive buddy of similar skill and interest. Make your next dive vacation a trip to remember. Dive with Uncle Cal's Dive Club. That's my elevator pitch. That's on a separate piece of paper that's in the Marla folder. That speaks to Marla's goals and challenges, fears, and values, okay? And everything, whenever I am talking to Marla, I look at her persona page, and then I read through this, and I read through, I've got another page also that has another little short snippet. Now, my message to Ken is totally different. When you travel with us, we take care of all the legwork. You don't have to do weeks of pre-travel planning. You don't have to worry about pricing or your budget, pricing versus your budget. You pay one low price, you spend a week diving, that's it. Dive with us and let us sweat the details. I've planned dive trips before. It is a nightmarish process. First, you have to find some place to go. Once you get there, you have to find a dive shop that you can dive with. Then you have to find some place to stay. A buddy of mine planned a trip for us to Belize, and we had a wonderful week in Belize, and we dove with a great little shop, but it probably took 40 to 60 hours of research and planning before he got to that. Well, Ken doesn't have time to do that. He's got a job, he's got a family, he's got a wife and a daughter. He wants to focus on that. But if I can go to Ken and say, here's the price, you show up at the airport, we do the rest, he's good to go. He's going to be interested in that message. And of course, with Jeff's a college student. Jeff's broke, okay? But if you travel with Uncle Cal's Dive Club, we provide you the best dollar for your, or the best value for your dollar. We give you one low price, and we can arrange for easy payments. If you can't make that one low price, then we'll spread that out over 12 months. And at the end of those 12 months, you'll go on the dive trip. Join us for a trip that will shatter your expectations, but not your piggy bank. That speaks to Jeff. Marla makes $150,000 a year. She doesn't care about easy payments. She can lay down her credit card and say, I'll buy this if I feel like you're going to meet what I need. But Jeff can't do that. Jeff doesn't have an Amex Gold card. He has to figure out how he's going to be able to afford this. We can make it easy for Jeff to do this. But the messaging is different. And I can do this messaging because I looked at Jeff's persona and I said, what's going to speak to him? What are his challenges? What are his goals? What are his fears and values? And I craft a message that speaks to him. Now, additionally, for each person, you're going to want to craft one or two simple themes that all of your messaging to this persona is going to have to cover. For Jeff, my messaging is simple. We're affordable. You can do this. You can go diving even on your limited budget. For Ken, it is. We sweat the details so you can spend more time with your family. And for Marla, we're there for you. You're never going to dive alone. We will always take care of everything for you, and we're going to make everything memorable. That's the third sheet of paper, and for each of them, I've actually got 2 or 3. I picked off the easy one for this, but I have a separate piece of paper in each folder because I've got 2 or 3 of these messages that I have for each persona, and they're important, and they might change over time. I might, as COVID changed everything for the dive industry. So my personas had to change to meet current expectations. Now, as we're seeing things, at least here in South Florida, as we're seeing things start to open up again, my messaging is changing again. So I'm having to make sure that I keep my personas updated. This is not a set it and forget it type thing. Marketing is all about constant revision and constant renewal, and you're going to have to do that. So, as I said, these personas took me about 20 hours to create, and they're not done. I've still got more work to do on them. I figure by the time I finish the first cut of them, I'll have about 60 hours invested in this project. I'm still analyzing some new industry data that just became available in the last couple months. I'm reading through that. Finding industry data is a pain. If you are in an industry that has an industry trade association, sometimes they publish information for free. Other times you have to join the association. We have, in the dive industry, we have one called DEMA, the Dive Equipment and Manufacturers Association. And they publish a lot of data. Some of it's free, some of it's for members only. And so I'm going to have to join because they've got some reports that I really need to flesh that out. But if I join and I get those reports, then I can get a much better picture and I can target my customers much better. The longer you spend, the more refined your profiles will be. And the more refined they are, the better you are able to answer questions about them and craft messages to them, okay? Personas are an important tool in marketing, but one that so many small businesses think, hey, I just don't have time to do that. I'll do that later, okay? And things like that. And if you're too busy to build personas when you before you start to craft offers, then when you do start crafting offers or you start crafting emails to your mailing list, you're guessing. If you don't have time to build personas, do yourself a favor, go buy a magic 8-ball, because that's absolutely going to be as accurate as you guessing, but it'll be a lot faster. Okay, that's the end of it. Let me pop the window back up and see what questions we have. Okay, we only have 3 questions. Wow. Why do we need personas, and what makes it a great idea? Well, I think I've covered most of that. That's why you need, I gave you the reasons why you need them. As to why they're great, it's because they keep you from guessing at how to talk to your customers and who your customers are. Okay, if you've developed 3 or 4 personas that cover 80 to 90% of your customer base, then you're no longer guessing. When you start to write an email, you can look at the persona for Jeff and say, I'm crafting this message for Jeff. What do I need to say in this message for Jeff? Not for everybody. And the more targeted you can get on your communications, the more likely are that people are going to buy from you. Okay. What if I don't even have 100 customers? If you don't even have 100 customers, you're in the exact same boat I am. Uncle Cal's Dive Club is just starting out. So I don't have customers. What I've got is a lot of industry data that I am compiling. And also, I can craft a survey, and most of the forums that I'm on for scuba diving and Facebook and places like that will let me post a survey as long as it's not trying to sell something. And as long as I'm not collecting email addresses or things like that, forcibly collecting them, then most of them will let you do it. Now, your reputation there is important. I have a good reputation, most of the forums I'm in, so they know I'm not going to start doing nefarious things, so they'll let me do things like that. If you're brand new to a forum, I don't suggest that the first post would be, hey, I'm doing an industry survey. Get in there, answer some questions, talk to people, build your reputation first. Then when you do that, the admins usually are not going to take it down unless you're just blatantly violating the rules. Henriette. Yes, Henriette. Yes, most of these webinars are available on YouTube. Eliana, can you paste the YouTube link in somewhere so that they can find the YouTube channel, or you can just go out to YouTube, search for SiteGround. They've got a bunch of other stuff. Most of the webinars they have are not me, and they're much more interesting. So make sure you watch all of them. How do you sell the time and resource investment to your company in developing personas? That's a tough one. See, I am my company, so, and I understand the value of it. If you pitch the idea and they just won't go for it, then you've got two choices. You can move on and keep guessing, or you can develop them on your own and develop your set of personas. And that way, when questions come up about what should we do, how should we message this particular product or this particular offer, you have your personas, and you can look and say, well, I think we ought to have two different messages, and these ought to be the central themes of them. It'll make you look like the hero. And then when you get promoted up to director or whatever, who's ever in charge, then you say, okay, now we're going to spend the time and we're going to create these things officially. Jan, thank you so much. I have been in marketing for quite some time, but it's always nice to be validated by somebody else, or somebody else in the industry. So thank you so much. Which chat software is this? Crowdcast.io. Julian, it's crowdcast.io. Okay. When I collect data from my existing customers, who should I choose from them to interview or send surveys? I'd send the survey to anybody and everybody you can get to participate, okay? Just shotgun it out. Everybody that's ever bought anything from you, hey, would you help me out by answering these 5-10 questions? You can use SurveyMonkey. SurveyMonkey, last time I used SurveyMonkey, it would let you do 10 questions for free. If you can fit it all in 10 questions, hey, that's great. I used to subscribe to it because then it gave you like 99 questions. I never went more than about 20, maybe 22 questions on my surveys. I didn't want to take up a lot of people's time, but I would always do that. And then, you know, they give you, you can take the answers after a week, you know, pretty much it's finished. You can export it to a spreadsheet, and then you can start slicing it and dicing it and making pretty graphs and things like that. As far as who to call, that's a tough one, okay? If you can't think of anything else, then take the answers to the surveys that you have email addresses for and randomly select however many you're going to call and email them and say, hey, can I schedule a 5-minute, 10-minute call with you? Always pick more than you're going to need, because a good chunk of people are simply going to say, no, I'm too busy. But if you have a good reputation, you remember we've talked about know, like, trust. If you've already got that know and like in there, then they're usually going to say yes. You're usually going to have people that say yes. If you're just cold calling, most of them are going to say no. But if you've got that know and like in there, most people are going to say yes. And then you can start collecting that information. How to implement this in multi-level marketing? I have no idea. I honestly have never done multi-level marketing in my life. I do apologize because that's probably not the answer you wanted, but that's just not my forte. Carolina, you said our email database is the most important tool for a person building. I don't have a big database, very few contacts. How to get better contacts? We actually talked about that last month. So if you go out to YouTube and find the one on driving traffic, that's all that's about, is how to drive traffic to your site, how to build your email list. I'll give you a spoiler. You're going to like some of the answers because they don't cost money. You're not going to like some of the answers because they do cost money. So, but honestly, the ones that don't cost you money cost you time. If you put a value on your time, what you usually find is that the ones that cost you money actually cost you less. Got any recommended reference sources worth looking into? Yes, but I don't have it handy. There is y'all can see this. Okay, there's a guy named Russel Brunson, and he's got 3 books out, and that's the first one, .com Secrets, and they're $7-8 a piece. And he talks a lot about funnels. Remember, I talked to you about funnels. Okay, a lot of the stuff I learned about funnels, not all of it, I added to some of it, but a lot of the stuff came from him, but not in this book. But he's got a red book, a blue book, and a green book. In the green book, he talks about your ideal customer. There's a whole section on that. I highly recommend that. So it's Russel Brunson, and I think that one's called Traffic Secrets. I only have the red book. I have the blue and the green on audiobook. And about once a month, I will listen to them all and then pick another. I'm a big audiobook listener, and I'll pick another one and I'll listen to something, and then I'll go back and listen to those until they've all sunk in. But anything Russel Brunson's doing, it's worth it. But his green book is got, he talks about your ideal customer, and you'll find out more about personas in there. What are we at? Okay, we still got 8 minutes. Can you go after a persona who is not currently buying for you? Yes, you certainly can. If you can, and one thing I did not mention on here, but the dive industry is very interested in potential divers, non-divers who are potential divers. The problem is we can't figure out how to identify that, okay? We can look at our existing customer and say, well, now we know who they are, but we don't know why they are. Once you can figure out why your existing customers are your customers, you can start looking for other ones like them and start to convert them. The easiest way to do this, as in not strategy, but physical tactics, is Facebook has lookalike audiences. So you can upload your mailing list to Facebook's ad system and say, build me a lookalike audience that doesn't exist in these. And you only pick your good customers, you paste them in there and you upload them, and Facebook will say, well, we know all of these people that look kind of like these people, and then you start running your ads to them. If that works and you're actually making money off of it, then you just keep running those ads until you stop making money off of it. How do you match the people in your mailing list to a persona? I don't match them directly. Well, I guess I do match them directly. It's on if they fit in enough of those categories. Nobody fits in all the categories or all the attributes that I picked, but the ones that are labeled Marla on my mailing list are ones that are close enough. Basically, to me, their income and their training level are the two most important things, and beyond that, are they active divers? Are they what we call a diver or someone who dives? And that helps bucket them. But a Marla is someone who is not necessarily a woman, but is someone who makes 150-ish or more, because that's our median for what we call our divers. But it makes someone who makes that kind of money has at least the advanced open water and likes to travel. We can keep going. Okay. Amongst all the possible personas could be formed by the data that you used in your example, how and what techniques do you use? Whittle it down to these three. My industry data that was published broke them down into about 6 groupings, and I kind of stretched and fudged and squeezed them into 3 groups because I didn't want 6 personas, but I picked out the ones that were interesting to me. Okay, chances are real good if you are in an industry that already has an industry trade group that not only do they have the groupings, they've probably got personas that you can purchase, and if you can do that, it's probably going to be cheaper than trying to build these yourself. Do I see Pinterest as a possible source? You know, I have never considered that. I'm not a big Pinterest user, but I guess it could be one more source of information. If they're posting a lot of dive pictures, then they're probably someone who's in diving. I could look at their profile and glean some information from them. But it's not something I have done on a regular basis. Most of the dive community exists on Facebook. So if I'm using social media at all to mine for data, it's usually on Facebook, as opposed to I also work in the PHP developer community. Most of that community is on Twitter. So if I'm talking to the PHP community or I'm looking for ideas or anything like that, then I'm on Twitter for that. Let's see. Okay. 4 more minutes. When you get a new subscriber, when you get new subscribers to your email list who haven't bought from you, what are ways you can attribute to their persona to each person? Easiest way, send them a survey and tell them, hey, I'm doing a survey. Can you answer this? You don't have to tell them they're the only one you're sending it to, but send them a survey and ask them a few extra questions to help you put them in the right bucket. I think, oh, wow, we got through all the questions this time. Okay. With that, we are right at time. So I'm going to thank you so much for your time. Thank you for everybody. And if you need me, find me over on Twitter. I'm happy to help.